All right, good evening. We're going to get things going here. Welcome. It is Wednesday, January 4th, 6:30 p.m. for a joint Town Council and School Committee work session regarding the CIP. First order of business is the pledge to the flag. All right, next on the agenda, we have the land acknowledgement statement, which I will read. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land in which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. All right, that's going to move us to item 2, discussion regarding the capital improvement program for fiscal year 2023, 2024 through 2028, 2029. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Manny for an introduction.
Thank you, Council President. Happy New Year to everyone. I'm going to be very brief, just go over the overview of what we're doing tonight and why we're here. So tonight is work session, CIP work session number 1, relating to the school department. The Superintendent Mark Prince and I had a discussion last week. We had to switch the days. Tonight originally was scheduled for the town to do their CIP as the number 1 work session, but the school department and school committee had a conflict, and they requested to change it to tonight, which was granted. So you're going to see the CIP for fiscal year 23-24 all the way up to 28-29 by the town tomorrow night and the school department tonight. There is a note I would add, though, for tonight. Public access TV is not broadcasting tonight. And the reason for that is the Narragansett Town Council meetings are broadcast tonight, and we could not supersede them. That's carved in stone with them. But it will be on ClerkBase, and it will be on YouTube, so it's being live streamed. So I just want to bring that to everyone's attention. So I will turn this over to Superintendent Mark Prince and his Finance Director, Raquel. Thank you.
Good evening. We're here tonight to present the capital budget for your consideration. As you know, we are required to submit our capital request to the town under Capital Improvement Program and Capital Budget Ordinance. Here tonight, we have our Director of Technology, Doug Snow, who will present technology request, and our Director of Facilities and Maintenance, Brian Mahoney, who will talk about the request for facility and maintenance. We have it broken down into 2 sections. As you know, it's our pay-go. And we do have a slide on our long-term projects, which there was a meeting last night, and there was some updates that we have to share. Just to recap, I think we had talked about it last year when we were here, but we just wanted to remind everybody. Prior to fiscal year 21-22, the school department had their capital request within the operating budget. Beginning in 21-22, we did shift to have a capital budget separate from our operational budget. Currently, on Rhode Island Department of Education's website, we only have per pupil for FY21. When FY22 per pupil is released, we're hoping that you'll be able to see per pupil in general operational funds and per pupil in capital. It really will help us compare to other districts. What is also new to per pupil is the breakout of tuitions, out-of-district tuitions. So I think starting in 22, when RIDE does release it, we'll have a lot more data to look at and how we compare from district to district. We're going to go now into presenting our technology requests. So Doug will be able to present that.
Good evening, Doug Snow, Director of Technology. Been with the district 22 years, Director for 14 years. Our capital requests, a lot of the projects that are doing is, a lot of the things we're getting old in our wireless. 2014, we put the wireless initiative from the state. We received about $1 million to go through our entire district. That's fiber, wireless, access points, routers. It was a huge upgrade to our networks in our district. Very, very, $1 million of free money. State hasn't come back with that. So we've been trickling out, replacing the wireless. A lot of it is, it's getting expensive. It's getting not as reliable, and it's about a 10-year end of life for that. So the staff computers, they didn't really factor in a lot of the forethought of, in 2012, 2013, we bought a lot of teacher machines, over 400. So over the last 3 years, we've been buying about 90 to 100 of them to start back replacing the teacher machines. So our whole network has changed a lot from just the desktops to using the wireless and harnessing the wireless as a tool for the students. You can see in here, in the 2nd grade, the students get a new machine that they'll probably use until the 8th grade. The 9th grade get a new machine that they'll use until they graduate. And we've been using that as a rollover cycle. The 750 leased machines was during COVID. We didn't have the funding for 750 machines. It was an emergency bid, pretty much to purchase so we could basically do remote learning during COVID. So that's a 4-year lease. So we still have a big stage, a group of students from the 4th grade to the 8th grade that are leased machines that'll come off lease in 1 year. It's in December, so we'll probably extend that out to June and get a 5-year lifespan out of those. Hardware, we have to replace the wireless with new wireless because the access points take more wattage. So a lot of that is built into, upgrading. We've already upgraded Broad Rock to the latest wireless because we know we're going to keep that building. So we've learned a lot of things from that where the new older laptops, say 2019, 2012, won't connect to the new wireless because they're 10, 12 years old. So the Cisco phone replacement, but we have one more batch of getting rid of the older non-SIP. Basically, the Cisco phones are almost little computers now too. So this will be the last year of getting, so we all have the updated models of phones. So there's about 550 phones in our district right now. So that's about it. Any questions?
Any questions from the members? Go ahead, Deb.
Sure.
So the support staff laptops that you have mentioned,
Yes.
how do you define support staff? Is that,
That's more the teachers, TAs. During COVID, everybody pretty much had a laptop. So we're trying to phase out the old desktops where now we'll put a docking station in for like $200 and that'll integrate their classroom. So our goal for Broad Rock is to do that, where everybody, you move from room to room, you just plug your laptop in and you're up and running, you use the projector and all the sound and reinforcement in there.
okay, so that's for the TAs.
TAs and mostly teachers too. And it's all by the age of what they have. So it'll be teachers, staff. I mean, it goes down to, it's like our support people out in the field, so they can use, even our technicians, they all pretty much have one.
Okay.
Any other questions from members?
I had the same question.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Next, we'll move on to a presentation from Brian Mahoney on facilities and maintenance.
Hello, everyone. We're going to start off with the 23-24 capital improvement plan for maintenance and facilities that we have up on the screen. The first line item being the high school fire alarm panel. The high school and Matunic both have failing fire alarm panels. Matunic was in the plan for last year, so there's a potential that we will do the high school currently, working with Lance Whaley from the town, and then last year with Terry Murphy. This fire panel at the high school is to the point of, it's at the end of its life. It shows small artifacts when the codes come up that aren't supposed to be there in the computer programming. So working with Lance and the town, they've recommended that that immediately be replaced. The same is starting to happen in Matunic. So between last year's capital funding to work on now, and then next year, those are the two panels we're looking to replace. At Broad Rock, we have the robotics room. We currently have the robotics room over there in the space. That was the former home ec room. Everything's been disconnected. It's safe for the students to be in, but it is still set up partially as a home ec room. So this money was to go to create a better learning space for the students, add electrical sockets, take all the old home ec equipment out, take all the old venting out, and give them the full space. The teacher over there has a whole track set up where they build their robots, and currently he tucks it between the old home ec, where the burners were and everything, has one little space. To open up the room for them would be huge for that program. The gym floor, also at Broad Rock, due to the age and the conditions of where it was built, has started to warp on one end of it. So we're looking into that now and getting pricing, and that's why we put on the capital, is that before next year, having our older students there, going into the building, and every kind of sport every night of the week, and town sports also playing there. We want to get that fixed. The district defibrillators, that was to replace 20 LifePak CR Plus defibrillators. The current ones we have been discontinued or out of date, and they no longer are manufactured and they don't have replacement parts. So that's for that. The district security cameras, that was on our capital 2 years ago during COVID, but we weren't able to purchase them that year because of delays in manufacturing and between the wiring of all the buildings and the manufacturing. Some of them were 10 to 12 months out just to get the amount of cameras we needed to do the project. So that's why it's on here again. That would only be the buildings we're keeping going forward. We wouldn't be adding cameras to buildings that we're going to be taking offline or to the high school with a potential of upcoming bond. The high school does already have a significant amount of cameras, but we wouldn't be adding specifically there. And they are removable location to location. Broad Rock bathroom upgrades, again, with having the older students there, with just it needing attention. We want to go in there, replace countertops, replace stalls, raise urinals, things of that nature at Broad Rock for the students. Broad Rock kitchen upgrades, working with Jack Jones, who is the manager over at Chartwell's Food Service. They, with the incoming student body, they need to add one piece of kitchen equipment. They need to add a new register system and a couple small fixes, like they need a few more outlets installed. They need an Ethernet drop from the ceiling to hook up into that cash register. So that's where we put in for that. Broad Rock parking lot safety, again, with the new student body there, a new configuration of parking. That line item includes line striping, removing the barriers that are there now for parking, fixing curbing, replacing all the current signs, because we have discussed possibly changing all the traffic patterns to go in reverse order. So kind of an overhaul of the parking lot, not major construction, but getting it so it's safe for daily travel. The HVAC controls is based on a program. We currently have Jerry Drummond at National Grid working on a package for us for the HVAC control system. What we currently use is a very outdated system that's based out of my maintenance shop. That is a very old computer. We can't efficiently control every building to the level we need to, and there's a large incentive currently through National Grid to upgrade these systems. It would upgrade our HVAC controls, it would upgrade our cybersecurity, and we would be able to have a live feed of what's going on, whereas right now, with it being outdated, we can pull up this computer screen, and I can have someone on a roof of the building, and what I'm seeing is the opposite of what they're seeing due to age of units and age of this computer system. And then vehicle replacement program. We currently have one vehicle that's able to plow. We used to have a fleet where my maintenance staff could plow. This year, our two other trucks we had, which I believe our newest vehicle is from 2015. Two of the vehicles became inoperable. One of them we're getting quotes now to repair. The other one had to be taken out of service. So at this point, we have multiple vehicles that we use, but they're all coming to the end of their life. The highway department does a great job helping us out and, you know, fixing them up for us and making sure everything's working well on them when we need to, but we haven't bought a vehicle for the maintenance department in a very long time. So that's for 23, 24. Is there any specific questions?
I have a couple of questions.
Yep.
So the Broad Rock bathrooms.
Yep.
Originally, that was built as a 6, 7, 8
Yep.
school. So when I read through, it actually says current bathrooms are set up for 5th and 6th grade. So that's not right, because it was built,
Yeah, they do have, they don't, I mean, it's not like the elementaries where they have some of the smaller toilets and things like that. It's just, in my time here, we haven't done anything with the partitions. There's some partitions that need to be replaced.
Right.
Also looking into possibly putting vape detectors in, which we have done at the high school, which I forgot to mention when I was going over it, but
so I see that. I just for accuracy,
yeah,
I don't have any issue with the upgrades, because honestly, I'm sitting here thinking $15,000 for bathroom upgrades.
yeah.
I don't know how many bathrooms, male bathrooms there are, so I think that seems sort of small.
Yeah,
But in terms of just accuracy, because it was originally built as a 6, 7, 8 school.
Correct.
Everything was built for 6th, 7th, 8th grade
Correct.
student-sized people.
Yep.
So even raising the urinals isn't needed,
isn't needed, yeah,
but it's probably needed because it's 22 years old.
yeah.
That's-
And,
So just kind of presenting it, not for you, but
Yep.
for the community to understand, it's just to do it's a little upgrade, because $15,000 couldn't get you very far.
yeah, and that's like after 21 years, it's a lot of the countertops are chipping away. Basic plumbing, which we do in-house, issues, but it'd be more reinforcing the stalls,
Yep.
getting them up to snuff, and the countertops, and possibly vape detectors also.
Can you just explain a little bit how the vape detectors work? If you
I'll
know.
pull Doug up for that one. Doug's a little more technically skilled than I am with those.
Just something new to me, and
No.
vaping is new.
We have the Halo system, it's called, over at the high school. It's been very, basically it sends an email to the principals, deans, myself, that if different toxic levels, it does noise, violence, and basically we put the cameras outside of the bathroom so, we can see who comes in and out and things like that. So it's been very popular at the high school to kind of rein that in and help too. So it's an upgrade we look to do at the middle schools also.
Great, thank you. I have another question.
Yep.
So the Broad Rock kitchen that you're going to upgrade, just a curiosity, and this probably isn't for you, Brian, but Broad Rock was a 6th, 7th, 8th middle school a number of years ago, and when it was full, it had a certain number of students. How many students was that compared to what we anticipate going in the fall? I don't think you need to know.
Yeah, I don't have that number in front of me.
What the increase is the percentage of children eating hot lunch is a lot more now than they were serving back then. So there's two issues with the cafeteria/kitchen. The first one is we have to go to 4 lunches at Broad Rock come next September, because the capacity of the cafeteria won't allow us to just go to 3, which actually helps us get the kids through the kitchen for the hot lunch service, but we still need a 3rd serving line to get that many kids hot lunches now. So the change is actually the percentage of children eating hot lunch, not the number of kids eating lunch.
I understood, but thank you for providing that. I just didn't know if you could answer how many students you anticipate next year attending Broad Rock for 6, 7, 8 versus what we had in, say, 2002. I know some of you are going to say I was in high school. What? Okay.
All right, thank you, Deb. Mike?
I have a couple of questions, and Ms. Vetter started to lead into it. You've got 5 items on your list that are specific to Broad Rock. Are they all related to the redistricting and the influx of students that are going in?
These were all based off of the closure of Curtis Corner and the total number of students, which again, I don't have unfortunately, but just getting it, so September 1st, we can open school and everything's where it needs to be for safety.
And that leads to my next question. Are those items going to be done for September when the kids are starting?
Yes, that's what my plan would be. Most of these don't have, for the Broad Rock specifics, don't have lead times. I mean, parking lot striping is 1 day, signs 1 day. The kitchen equipment can be ordered, say mid-July if this is approved. And I don't see, any issues with the Broad Rock upgrades being done before school starts.
And 3 of the items are under the general term of security, and I don't want to get into specifics, but that's been coordinated with Chief Moynihan, I assume?
Yes, yeah, we've met with the chief with adding district security, and they are fully on board with, again, especially the exteriors of the buildings. We have very outdated cameras and we have very limited coverage, especially at the elementaries, which isn't safe. So,
Like I said, I didn't.
and modernizing it. And the nice thing with this system that we currently use at the high school, the people who have access to it can be on a cell phone real time and see what's going on at any building in the district once they're installed.
Any other questions?
I just want to go back. Perhaps you don't know how many are there in 2002, but how many do you anticipate in September opening when you open the doors?
Roughly 570 students.
Thank you.
And the breakdown, just for that cafeteria unit, I have it right here. The equipment requested from Chartwells was about 8,900 of that. And the rest would be electrical outlets, internet drops, and conversion of a current piece of machinery they have there from electric to gas.
Page 5-50, if anyone ever wants to see where it is.
All right, thank you.
But, I have a few more things. So there's no more questions on the 2023-24? Okay, thank you. For the 6-year plan, our 6-year capital plan was generated by master planning from Studio Jade, as well as our school department's historical facilities data that we had in-house. All the planning we did during this capital cycle was based off the closure of Curtis Corner and Wakefield Elementary. The capital totals that are on the 6-year plan do not include anything with the current SK High School. And the current plan is subject to change based on the school building committee and the stage 2 submittal and bond that we'll be going forward with.
So I got a quick question for you there.
Yep.
So these needs identified over this 6-year period, which excludes any consideration of school facilities, will these numbers sort of go down or be included in the new facilities number if that's proceeded down? So you separately identified needs over a 6-year period here, and it excludes consideration of a new facilities plan. If there's a new facilities plan, are these numbers sort of included in that new facilities plan? I guess
These would be separate. These would be all the schools. This would be essentially Peacedale, Matunic, district-wide projects, Peacedale, and Broad Rock, and West Kingston. So it
So
excludes.
these are in addition to school facilities plan.
Correct. Yeah, this is separate from the school building committee's bond. If it passes, again, if it doesn't pass, or if there's a major change, or depending on what we do, this is subject to change with going forward, especially 6 years.
So none of these are in that list of millions of Phil talks about the deferred maintenance. None of these are those things? Is that?
Yes, some of these.
Yeah, that's what I thought Rory asked.
Okay, okay. Yes, so this data was generated from the 5-year, and we have that on the final slide, but it's off the Studio Jade's 5-year capital plan that they put together, and the planning we had historically. That's where this new capital plan was generated from. So it does include items from Studio Jade. So you'll see, I'll give you an example.
So just to be clear,
Yeah.
the deferred maintenance route were pursued. These amounts included here over the 6-year period would be included in that deferred maintenance 65 million amount. Versus if we were to pursue the new facilities plan, 125 million, these would be in addition to that 125. Is that correct?
Some of it would, yes, some of this here overlaps that deferred maintenance.
Okay, but it does not overlap the new facilities plan if a new high school were pursued, because this is separate from the high school.
Separate from the high school. Separate from the high school, but encompasses all the other schools with Studio Jade's findings of the next 5 years, what we should do to the buildings. I don't know if it equals the exact deferred maintenance total that Phil has reported to us, but this data did come directly from Studio Jade for most of these line items.
Understood. Thank you.
Brian, we don't want to put you too much on the hot seat, so we'll just wait.
I am here to answer,
Okay.
and sorry for the confusion.
No, it's not confusing, I think,
I wear too many hats around here, so I get a little confused sometimes.
plus you're like on the school building committee, so you're on both. Okay, so nothing, there are no high school line items other than the fire panel?
Correct.
Okay.
Such as last year when we came in front of you, we had a high school chimney repair, we had many high school items, but
Right.
again, to reflect the bond potentially going through for a new high school, it was left off of this planning.
I'm not sure if it's in here or in the capital budget that we got, capital improvement thing that I printed off. The Curtis Corner track, is that just like a placeholder that just gets moved around like a, because in somewhere it says refurbish the track.
And that was put on, and my omission, that was the one Curtis Corner item put on there. Again, if the bond were not to go through, that would be needed.
I just can't remember where I saw it.
The track resurfacing Curtis Corner,
In the field
24,
house.
25.
Okay, and the field house.
And the field house, yeah, and I did put it on there as a placeholder in case we go forward and there's no bond, or if the bond doesn't include any kind of fields, because currently we cannot host track meets.
I understand. So is that in this small packet?
It's, 24, 25 at the bottom.
Yeah, it's in the slide. The print's very small. We may have to do something about that next time around. It's not you, it's not your eyes. The print is really small.
It's not alphabetized, nor is it have the school, so it's like, there's not a quick way to find it. But it
Yeah.
is in here?
Yes. It's towards the bottom.
Up from the bottom.
Oh, even smaller.
We will number the slides next time also.
Field house and storage shed updates, CCMS field, 20,000, and then, right? And
Yes, correct.
And then track resurfacing is above it, 250,000. And those are potentially, could come off.
Could come off, yes, if that was included in the bond.
Okay.
Any other questions on my confusing data? I really do hate that it's such small print too, so sorry about that.
All right, thank you.
I got one more for you. I'm the presentation guy tonight. And we can go to the final slide, please. So our capital improvement long-term major projects, we want to kind of give you a summary and overview of where we currently are. The facilities assessment and capital master plan. Studio Jade has generated a 5 years facility plan and stage 1 submittal for the school department, which has been submitted to the Rhode Island Department of Education. On the school building committee side, the committee continues to work to define a plan for the South Kingstown schools to be proposed to the school committee and the town council for approval. The timeline for the stage 2 submittal was recently extended by the school building committee to ensure the best possible plan is submitted for the approval. For the capital improvement long-term projects, the Stage 2 submittal for a new building or buildings will take place in the spring of '23 and a bond vote in the fall of '23. And currently, our buildings will continue to have deferred maintenance and need attention due to the lack of major investment in the past 20-year cycle. And now I'm done. If you guys have any questions.
You did great, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anything further from us, Mr. Superintendent? No?
Can I ask a question? And it may not be answered at this time, but I'd like to just put it out there so everyone can think about it. The bottom timeline for the bond, this is me just thinking out loud. The Stage 2 gets created and submitted June 1. We have to, at the same time, simultaneously communicate with the state legislature that we want to have enabling legislation. We're doing that simultaneously because I'm thinking like might not be in session after June 30th. So there's that moving piece. Then there's the moving piece of the submission. Then RIDE has to give it back to us, correct? And we know from the last Stage 2, they had 13 pages of feedback and commentary. We can anticipate at least something. And then at the same time, probably, I don't know how this body feels, but we then have to prepare for a special election. And how much lead time, I guess my question is, who's keeping track of all of that sequencing? Because it would be hard for people to feel comfortable to have a special election without having heard that the Stage 2 is approved. So if at some point somebody could just organize like the timelines of dates so we sort of know what milestones we need to hit, because I can only speak for myself that I wouldn't want to create an election going forward without an approved Stage 2. I think we learned a lot that we didn't like that because we were in a lot of flux over it. So if we could just take the big view of what needs to happen when and all those moving parts and do it sooner, so we all, and when I say all, I mean all 30,000 people, know what needs to happen, and so we're working together in one place instead of turning in the RIDE application and then waiting, and then in July, that's not enough time to have an election, because for whatever reason. Just thinking big picture and zoomed way out. No one has to answer, it's just something I think about.
I think we can definitely ensure that we only have a bond referendum if there is approval of the Stage 2 by RIDE. Now, I know in the past we considered bond referendum contingent upon approval before it was approved, but we can
Correct.
sort of not do that this time, not consider that.
So
Ensure
I'm-
that the referendum takes place, I don't know, a month or two
Well, exactly.
after we know there has been approval.
Exactly, but we need to be thoughtful in how we put all the pieces together so that we don't,
How long does it usually take for RIDE to approve a Stage 2 application? Do we know that?
Not concretely. It sometimes can be very quickly, and it sometimes can take a long time. As Councilman mentioned, there's your last one, you had 13 pages of feedback, and it had to go back again and be reviewed again, and all those kind of revisions add more time to the process. So there's no real concrete time. I think the work that the school building committee has been doing has been using a May kind of vote or May kind of timeline to kind of submit the Stage 2 application, not necessarily June. I think your point that you're making around mapping that out, I think it's a fair point. I know we've talked about it, and it's in our heads, but it probably would be fair to the public and both committees to kind of plan that out where it's really clear. So I'm confident we can do that.
I'd just like to add to that, that when the school building committee decided to apply for an extension, that was one of the first questions that came up. And although I don't have the definitive answer for you tonight, between the chair of the committee itself, Mr. Conti and RIDE, the representative from RIDE, we were assured that the timeline would work and give us ample opportunity to make adjustments if needed. But I agree with you, we probably should have it in writing and so everyone can see it.
Susan is here, right? So it's like Susan has all that behind-the-scenes work to plan, and so she needs a certain amount of lead time. So I don't want anyone to feel like we're rushing, but I feel like we know sometime, I don't think it would be reasonable to think we're going to have the special election in September because of back to school and all that. So now you're like October or November. So what do we need to do to meet that? And have, I think about the legislature isn't here after June 30th, so we already know we need stuff on our end to do. So just wanted to just think big picture and broadly of like putting all those things in place and to know that, I think, as Rory is also saying, having an approved stage 2 before we put Susan through the process of putting together an election. So I think it's backwards design or whatever we need to do to make sure that we're doing all of that as well. And I just wanted to say it because we're not often in the same room to hear, no one has to answer, but just to hear the thoughts to then go back to our places and move that along in the right way. There's just not opportunity, we don't have that many opportunities with the school committee.
Makes sense? Go ahead, Mike.
This was discussed at one of the last school building committee meetings when the representatives, Mario from RIDE, was there. And my impression listening to Luke, the chair of this building committee, was that they're in fairly constant communication with RIDE at this point.
They really are, and this wasn't something we just thought of lightly. We thought of that from day one. Once the school building committee collectively asked for an extension, we were assured that there was ample time, but unfortunately, the two people who really have the answers for that are not here tonight. So, but I agree. We'll get the timeline for you, and we'll get that in writing.
Just one last piece, because I forgot this and when you said that. We also need to have that, whatever that signed document is, by December 30th. So finishing and passing the stage 2, we have to leave ourselves enough time on the other side of the election, should the bond pass, to get that done too. So it may not be November that the ideal date is, it might be October, so that we have time on the other side to, I don't know, whatever, then get the contractor to sign the thing. That's what we're talking about, has to be signed. So I just want to make sure we're really thoughtful and everyone understands that we need to, it probably is October and not November, because it's clearly not September. When you think about it in the big picture, when that election would be. I don't know.
We've been assured that there's ample time, so that's something that we'll put back on the radar and get a timeline and just to ensure that.
So Jim, since the committee's been working hand in hand with RIDE, sort of constant update communication, we would expect sort of quick turnaround on a hopeful approval.
Well, once again, I'm not the chair, I'm one of the members, but that was what we were told, that we would have a fairly quick turnaround. It never came up that the timeline, once we decided we needed an extension to really think through what we were going to do, we were assured we had that time, and that we would have ample time to make any adjustments as needed. But you're right. I mean, I know Luke is constantly in touch with RIDE, with Mario, and going over all these timelines and so forth.
Yes. However, you coming up? I'm just going to say that when we submitted the stage 2 on April 15th or whatever that deadline was, it was like about a month later, we got the 13 pages. So they're not going to read it. It's a 1,000-page thing. They're not going to read it in 2 days. And then, so there are a lot of new people here who may not have been deep in the weeds at that point to realize that all of that eats up time. So we all really want this project to go forward. I'm just putting it out there so everyone realizes that we need to be very strategic with all of the pieces to make sure we meet it.
Just to echo what Jim and Mark had said, one of the points that was also brought up by Studio Jade and also RIDE was, by doing that extension, it was the best to get our plan in order and get the best approval, but also we won't be competing with other districts at that time. Most of the other submissions will be already done through their system, worked on, so we'll only be another handful at that time. So RIDE can't promise us, but we will be going, they'll have more resources to work on our submission rather than, 20 different districts all at once sending them submissions. So I just wanted to clarify on that.
And we're also not dropping 1,000 pages on them in May for the first time. That was also part of the stage 1, if I'm not mistaken. And stage 2 is essentially a refinement of what we've already submitted.
Correct. Or not,
No, the stage one,
the stage 1 had
totally different.
many of the finer details. That's why I said correct. The finer details, the actual plan going forward, what our vision is and location and what's getting done in every building, so.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to move along in our agenda here. I mean, we're at the point of status of facilities plan. We've talked about it a little bit here. I know that the school committee had a special meeting. Mrs. Superintendent, can you just sort of brief us on that quick?
The school committee met last night to discuss the request put forth by the town council about weighing in on a location based on the program plan of the district for the high school. With a 6-0 vote, the committee instructed me to let the school building committee make them aware that they'd selected, based on the information that we had, they believe that the best match would be Columbia Street.
He's wrong.
So the next step in the process, I guess, would be the school building committee working through stage 2 applications for a deferred maintenance option and a new high school option. And at some point presenting this to the school committee for their vote as to which one to submit to RIDE, and then that would have to come to the council for a concurrent vote for it to go to RIDE. Is that correct?
Correct, when a few other things inside that, but that's the big rocks.
What are the few other things, if you could just sort of...
Simply, for example, examination of swing space. And is it a single swing space, meaning we would just all shift high school over to Curtis Corner Middle School, and then what does that entail? Or is it a double swing space, meaning they're taking down half the building and doing some construction, and the CTE aspects will still be able to run, but you can't do English, math, science, and social studies, those sort of things. So you're accurate in your description of the big things, then it's the little finite details of the planning.
Understood. Any questions from the members with respect to the facilities plan right now? All right, we're going to move to our next thing here. Item 3, discussion regarding implications of capital improvement program budgets for the fiscal year 23-24 school and municipal operating budgets. So in light of all that you've just outlined as the 6-year capital improvement program and the pay-as-you-go first year, we just want to sort of ask you to brief us on how that affects your operating budget for this coming fiscal year. So if you just want to talk about that briefly. I think one question I have specifically that can help sort of gauge the discussion is, you've requested about $800,000 in pay-as-you-go. That's what you have here in your first year for the CIP. Is that money that comes from the property tax transfer appropriation to the schools, and then you use money from there to sort of earmark it, designate it for the specific purpose that you've outlined here, or how does this work exactly?
So that's a discussion that we have to have with the school committee. I will say that with technology, there is a reimbursement from E-rate, so revenue will come in to support and offset the technology request. I think Doug can speak to that if you want specifics, but it's around 40% on the equipment. But, there is a change in our consultant that helps with the application, so we want to have more final data for you. With the facilities, there are a couple of different things to look at. One would be the $139,000 that we had earmarked in a previous year of fund balance for the security cameras. As Brian presented, what we weren't able to procure that in a prior year. So that money, that fund balance was designated for that purchase. That will carry over. We're also exploring an option to look at using a balance from the school lunch account to offset the repairs for school lunch. That will require us to get permission from Rhode Island Department of Education, so we'll be exploring that as well. As for the difference between the two, that's looking at all our funding sources, and at that point, when we do present the budget, we would then know what we would be requesting, if anything, for town appropriation.
All right, thank you. I want to ask you also about the timeline for when the school administration submits their budget to the school committee. What is that deadline? Is that March 1?
To submit to the town council, February, we will adopt it by February 14th.
Okay. All right, that's going to lead me to my next question, which is, in light of the anticipated future debt services that we've sort of looked at, reviewed, I think we had a meeting in December where we looked at over $5 million in annual debt service over a 20-year maturity. So I just want to ask you, do you have a plan right now? I know you haven't formed your budget yet, as to help sort of reduce the current costs that you have to help raise monies for the debt service in the future here, to share with the town, and then sort of unity between the two of us to make this, a feasible project?
Not at this time, but we anticipate to continue combing through it. Because we are merging two buildings, to two middle school buildings, we anticipate some savings there, but we are not at this time in a position to put a number to it. And clearly, between now and February the 14th, a lot of that will be flushed out, but there are still some unknowns from the state, but we are combing through the process.
Deb, go ahead.
I apologize, I didn't ask this at the right time. It just literally came to me. The preschool is still at Wakefield School, and we do anticipate that it won't be operating as a preschool at the end of 2024. Have we identified any location for it, and any, obviously, wherever it goes, some money needs to improve, because we need little toilets there, and we need fenced-in play area, and all the other things that you talked about at a building committee meeting. So how or when will that information come forward?
It's a good question. It's a dual conversation, actually. There is the school building aspect of it that still needs to be flushed out, that if it's going to be incorporated as part of the high school program. So that's one conversation that needs to happen. Then there's the conversation that needs to occur with the school committee and the administration around the actual program, the specs of the program. And then if not the high school, then what else? And then actually there's a third problem on that. Then there's a ongoing conversation within the state around universal pre-K and what that means and that potential impact. So I think it's a fair question, not necessarily just in the scope of space, but also a fair question in the scope of our academic program and how it projects forward. The preschool serves not only to meet the early needs of early learners, but it's also the first introduction that families in the community have with the school system. And it's an opportunity for us to not only build positive relationships, but get students off on the right start for their learning. And so we have a bigger conversation happening within the department, the school department, around early learning and what that means. But then there's those three outside conversations that could impact this in so many ways.
Just to follow up on that, what's the status with RIDE right now as to universal pre-K, or for that matter, the legislature?
There have been conversations with individual legislators, very positive, depending on which meetings you've gone to. There have been some at the superintendent's level that have been somewhat positive, but no one really knows.
Any other further questions from council members?
I guess
Thoughts? Go ahead, Deb.
Are you wrapping up the meeting?
No, we're going to open it up, but I want to see if anyone has anything to say.
So help me understand, when would we come back to the preschool as part of the school building committee?
In what regards?
Would that be something that's included in the Stage 2 application?
If it's connected to the high school, and yes, it would be. If it's not connected to the high school, then it would be dealt with at a school committee meeting.
All right. Any other thoughts from members right now? Any thoughts from school committee members? Okay, we do want to open it up to the public, so we will do that at this time. If anyone wishes to speak on what we've been discussing tonight, I invite you to come on up. We just ask that you invite yourself, and you will limit you to 5 minutes. So with that said, first come, first serve. Come on up.
Oh.
Good evening, it's Doral Beasley. I was a little confused because today there was another thing that came out from the schools committee about another meeting tomorrow night. I thought what you did tonight was going to be tomorrow night. I thought tonight was a municipal night. Did you guys flip-flop them?
That's correct.
You did. You can come back tomorrow.
Yeah. So, the amount of money that you're contemplating to work on the high school, I think the bottom number was like 103 to build a new high school, but that was before Studio Jade went in and looked at the latest per square foot numbers, so now it was like 123. But that's not going to do it, okay? From the way I look at what you have facing you, anything under $150 million is not going to do it. So you need 123, if that 123 number was right, but he wasn't even sure that was right because the costs are continuing to go up. And you have like $18 million worth of things you want to do to the other schools now. So you're getting up to like $150 million. $150 million, 40 at 52.5%, if you get 52.5% reimbursement, you end up with like $71 million. That's the bottom number. And the cost for a 20-year bond is like $5,400,000. That's nothing. Really, seriously, that's not a lot of money for this town, for what we've been putting into our schools. Now, if I was you guys, this is what I would ask the school committee to do, because I brought this up time and time again, the big differential between us and East Greenwich, same amount of students, $25 million less. Now, if I was one of you guys, I would say to the school committee, I'd like to see a line item by line item comparison from this year to 2023 budgets for South Kingstown and East Greenwich, and then show us over there on the right side the differentials, and then go through the differentials and see where the big differentials are, and see if you can find areas where those differentials are huge in the negative thing that we can start working on. Just to take what they're going to present to you in a few weeks as face value, to me, it doesn't work anymore. Since you've been on the committee, Mr. McAdee, our cost per student is going up 25%. In the last 8 years, it's gone up 50. That's an unsustainable continuum, okay? That money, all that money that we've been putting in our schools needs to be shrunken. We need to get smarter, cheaper, younger. That's where the money should come to fix our schools. Then you would get 100% buy-in by the public. You can't put that back on the backs of the taxpayers. Now, if we had, so we have basically a $100 million town budget. If we had an $80 million town budget, so a budget of what it would look like if we were East Greenwich and we had to equalize the school program monetarily, the difference between 80 million and 100 million is the difference between $10.95 per thousand and $8.75 per thousand. That's $2.20 per thousand.
Dorald, you are past the 5. If you want to conclude, then I'll ask if anyone would like to speak, and then we'll let you come up again.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else in the audience wish to come up and speak? Ready to come up? Deb, go ahead.
Just Doral, before you sit down, I just quickly Googled East Greenwich school budget, and you can see a spreadsheet of all different line items if that's helpful to you. It's just a quick Google. I'm looking at a spreadsheet. So I understand what you're asking, but it is available.
Hi, speaking too loudly. I'm Laura Urban. Not a lot to remark, just I wanted to reiterate a point. I thought, Mark, you had a really good question last night about right-sizing the whole district. I know it's going to become about one site and one school and one bond and so forth, but I do appreciate that bigger picture perspective. And I think, Deb, some of your remarks had that bigger picture in mind as well. We have empty schools, we have underutilized schools. I've got young kids in the schools. I obviously want to see them improved and rehabilitated. But I do think you gotta think about the whole picture of the portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg, come on up.
I'm Greg Sweet. With the schools being right-sized, do you have any idea how many people would be cut as far as full-time employees go? Because if you do, you can figure all that out so that we would have an idea of what the savings will potentially be.
I do not. Part of my role last night with the committee was to be forward provocative, to float the questions.
You did that very well, by the way.
Broken clock is right twice a day. to spur the conversation, and we did that.
Yeah.
And it was a fruitful conversation. Please understand what my role is as the superintendent of schools. When the vote is done, it's my job to move the ball down the field, not to question why, not to do anything, but to follow the directives from the committee, which is what we'll do. And so.
Okay, I was just thinking if you knew, if you knew what that number was, and I'm just using a number, say you knew you were going to get rid of 20 people, you can assign a figure to that, and you can say, this is what some of the savings will be. Might be easier for the residents to go along with the bond, whether it be new or rehab, so.
Thank you, Greg. Anyone else in the audience like to speak for the first time? All right, seeing none. Doral, come on up.
So I looked at the new NESDEC report. So over the past 20 years, we've lost 40-some% of our students, and 1 out of every 5 students that lives in this town today goes to school somewhere else. Now, that's an unbelievable number, really. There are school districts in Massachusetts like Belmont, like just as an example, the Belmont School District. Their out-of-student percentage for their school district is 0.5%. 0.5. That means they have incredible resources within the school district to take care of all their students. We're around 20%. Because people will say, well, our student populations drop because people can't afford to come here anymore. But hold on. The two best school districts by academics and assessment scores is Barrington and East Greenwich, and I know they're wealthy districts. I got that part of it. But their enrollments for the last 20 years, while ours is cratered, has fluctuated about plus or minus 200 students for 2 decades. And why is that? Because people are still willing to pay the money to go to Barrington and East Greenwich for their schools. Until we bring our schools back up to the level where they were 25 years ago, and like Mr. Collins said a couple of months ago, what we used to be, we're going to continue to see this decline. How can a town with its state university, a hospital, all the stuff we have here that's just unbelievable, have this decline in our student population? To me, it's just almost unfathomable what's happened here. And as many times as I come up here and say the same thing, I don't hear anybody here trying to come up with any ideas of how to fix it. Now, we have the highest bond rating in the state, but our schools need $100 million worth of fixes. The condition of our schools in this town is a disgrace. It's a disgrace. We should be ashamed of ourselves to have let our schools get to where they are today. We owe it to the kids that are here now and the kids that are going to be here in the future. We need to pay, this town, this school district, the taxpayers, we need to pay this forward to this town. If we don't do this right, if we don't put the right amount of money into it, to have a first-class facility, they're going to look back on this 20, 50 years from now and say, what were we doing? What were we thinking? With global warming, a coastal community, global warming, our new high school should be as close to zero carbon emissions as possible. I Googled over the last 24 hours, high schools in the United States with geothermal heating and cooling. There's more of them all the time. They're being built. There's one in, I think it's Minnesota. They sunk 160 wells to heat and cool this school. It's a huge school, like 230,000 square feet. Ours is going to be a lot smaller. But we need to be thinking that way, okay? Is Curtis Corner going to close this year? So in September, will Curtis Corner be open or closed? Closed? But you can't move the kids from Wakefield to Peacedale, where the preschool area used to be, where the toilets are small. You can't do that now, in the fall? Just a thought.
Doral?
Gotcha.
5 again. Just want to sort of conclude.
He gave me 3 shots
I know. Let me ask one more
Give
time.
me 3 shots one time.
Don't go far.
All right. Anyone else? Come on up.
Hi, Jennifer Demetric. I do just want to make it short and sweet. We have 2 large pieces of our budget, which are transportation and teachers' pensions and salaries. We are lucky in this town, we'll go here first, the teachers, to have well-educated, dedicated, high-level teachers. And the rhetoric in this town of people saying that our teachers aren't worth it, you're going to lose support and you're going to lose teachers for education if we don't stand up behind them and we don't make sure that at least we're giving them what they need to do their job. This may not seem important to people who aren't having their children educated right now or are on a fixed income, but we're still going to have to run schools. There's still going to be, you say we have a smaller school, there's 12 kids in a class, you still need to pay that teacher. You still have to run that school bus. These are things that we can't just look past. And asking Mr. Prince to give a number of employees that are full-time that can be cut is ludicrous, because we're not even to the point of what programs would be cut if we look at this. So we don't know how many teachers are going to need to be cut. It's like putting the cart before the horse. You can't make a transportation plan for today that's going to work for September. It's not going to work. You can't cut teachers now that you may need in September, you may not need. So a lot of this, I think, is just fear-mongering and nitpicking at budgetary items. And I think it really needs, the rhetoric needs to stop. We need to put our energy into moving forward with how we're going to make sure that this gets done. We're not going to have the shiniest, newest high school in the state, but we need to do the best that we can with the funding that we do have, okay? And people need to be looking forward at what's best for the kids. And we do need to address the preschool issue. It's huge, and it's not there yet, but we need to get to a point where we can have that conversation. And we're not getting there when we're talking about cutting bus routes or cutting teachers or anything like that. We're not there. It's not, we need to deal with the main issues before we can start talking about every penny that's going to be spent and where it's going to go. So let's just make the plan, and we're going to try to put the right amount of money towards it. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else in the audience wish to come on up? All right, seeing none. Doral, we'll give you one last crack. That's it. We're holding a hard line on this one.
As I've said before, I'm not anti-teacher. My wife taught school for 40 years. But our teachers do have the highest average salary in the state of Rhode Island. And we only have, we have a 5-star school, a 4-star school, three-star schools, and a 2-star school. 2-star school is Curtis Corner, so I'm not sure what's kind of going on over there. We went from a 3 to a 2. I don't, because it's closing? I don't know. So this is something, this is some information, this is a number that I would need to know if I was trying to make these final decisions about what to do with your high school. How much are the two sites, the Curtis Corner site with the Curtis Corner School, the field, because the Curtis Corner site actually includes South Road School, so the two schools are on the same site. Now, if that was to be sold at some point in time, when it's abandoned by the district, what's it worth? There has to be a number that you can come up with, an estimate of what it might be worth. Is it worth more with the school still there in this or the track, or would it be more? It would be worth more if neither of them were there anymore. And the same question about the Columbia Street. Now, the plan is, I think I know it now, is that you're going to go and knock down 80% of the building, demolish 80% of the building, dig up all the parking areas. It's basically, you're going to get rid of everything except the original building that runs parallel to Columbia Street, which is about 45,000 square feet. And that building, you're going to gut. You're going to take everything out that's inside the building, and you're going to then put new stuff in that portion, and then put other things around it. Now, that's the last thing I got from the building committee meeting. It was either that, or you're going to go and knock the whole thing down and build everything from new. Those were the two options that that you've presented to you. Now, it was also said that about having the track and football field co-located on the hazard field on School Street. Now, at these meetings, I've heard, yes, it can be done. No, it can't be done. Maybe it can be done. Well, if I'm a taxpayer and I need to vote on this, I need to know if it can be done. Because for me, if we don't have a high school with a track and the football field next to it, it's not worth it. Because that's the model that people want. If you can't put the field there, that means you're going to have to do what you were doing today, which is what your athletic director said, which is basically moving kids all around town at the end of the school day, here, there, and everywhere, to practice, to play. That's money. That's money. It's not safe in some instances. You know, one of the other things was, well, we're going to put the school back. We're going to rebuild the Columbia Street School, but then we'll have the field over there by Broad Rock. But then you've got the kids going across the street again, which I thought you wanted to eliminate. I thought people were saying it was dangerous for our students to have to go across that street to Old Mountain Field, wherever they're going to go, to tennis. I don't know. Now, and the last thing is swing space. I know for a fact that my daughter has an 8-year-old at Curtis Corner, with the current plan, is not going to send my grandson to Curtis Corner to high school. There's just no way.
Doral?
Zero.
That's the 5, if you want to wrap it up.
Yep. And guess what? She's not the only person that's going to be a sticking point for. And for every student that decides every parent that decides they're not going to send their student to Curtis Corner for those 2 or 3 years, that's $20,000 per student. So if 50 students leave, that's another $1 million a year.
All right, thank you.
Rory? Sorry. Dorald? I was at the school building committee where athletic director Terry Lynch gave out the athletic needs. Did you get that?
Nah.
Okay. When this is over, I can make a copy and you can have it if it's helpful to you, because it does show all the sports and the number of sports that get shuttled around. It could be helpful to you.
Okay. And my comment about suggestion that you asked the school district to give you that comparison between us and East Greenwich, I already have it, okay? I don't need it. You need it.
Gotcha.
You need it to try and figure out what's going on here.
All right, thank you, Doral. Anyone else in the audience like to speak? All right, seeing none. Any final thoughts by council members?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the school committee personally. I'm really happy that you had that meeting last night. It was a special meeting, and I know the community is really appreciative. We're hearing back from people that they were happy that you were able to have that meeting. I know the last time we met, I was really unsure that it would happen, so I appreciate the fact that you got together and did that. I think it makes a lot of people feel more comfortable where we're headed, and I just wanted to personally thank you for that, and I think the community recognizes that you moved ahead. And I just wanted to also say, just to Doral personally, I appreciate when people come up to the microphone. It's never a burden. I think we don't have a lot of people coming, and we have very engaged people who have a lot of ideas and have spent a lot of time, and I want to recognize Doral for coming up, and it's never, I always want to welcome you, Doral, and I speak for just myself in saying that you can come every time, and I would want you to have the opportunity to speak, because you do a lot of research. You point out things like, for example, the East Greenwich budget. It is very interesting. It's very simple. It's a Google sheet, and as other people say, I'd like to be able to understand the budget in 3 pages and not 50 pages, and I think it's aspirational, at least for everyone to at least look at. I was looking at it. So I do appreciate every time you come here. Sometimes you say the same things, you have a lot of the same hits, but I think different people need to hear and really hear that we should look at why East Greenwich is different. Someone should be able to provide a very simple answer, whether it's the salaries, the substitute salaries, the whatever it is, we should understand it and go, okay, Doral, here's the reason why. And someone should be able to respond to you about top set teachers. Sometimes I think it's because they can't retire. So we have teachers who have been here for 30 years, they're only 52 years old. So they're not able to retire. So eventually our teacher faculty will age into that higher step and just be stuck there because they cannot retire. So I want to recognize that. I also want to say, I hear from people that they begrudge teachers a pension, and I just want to say, we never talk disparagingly about a firefighter or a police officer who serves their time and gets a pension, so I just want to put that out there, that we should acknowledge that they earned it as well. I sometimes wonder if it's a gender issue, that it's women are primarily teachers and men are primarily firefighters and police officers, and so we pick on them, and I don't think that's fair, and I want everyone should maybe think twice because of that, just that one thought. And I just wanted to say that.
All right, thank you, Deb. Mike, go ahead.
Just one clarification to follow up on what Deb said. For anybody who's watching this on TV and isn't aware of it, the special meeting for the school committee, and you can correct me if I get this wrong, there was a meeting last night, the options were discussed, and the school committee's preference was to have whatever facilities plan is finalized be at Columbia Street, correct? And that was 6-0? I think the unity of that also speaks volumes. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mike. Any other final thoughts from council members? All right, any thoughts from school committee members before we end here? Carol, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to the community member that spoke in favor of our teachers. We do have extremely dedicated, hardworking teachers, and we're very lucky to have them. We've been having declining enrollment for years in our district, and that's why consolidation is now necessary. These are very difficult decisions to make, and we don't take any of them lightly. But I never want to think of that we're getting rid of teachers. Every teacher we lose is a great loss to our district. And unfortunately, the consolidation process leads to loss in staff. But it's unfortunately, it's a necessity brought on by declining enrollment. I would love to see the town do something about affordable housing, do something to have young families be able to afford to live in our town again, so we can keep the wonderful teachers, administrators, and support staff that we have. We have a great school district. I'm very proud to serve this school district, and I think we need to all work together to keep it as good as we can. Thanks.
Thank you, Carol. Go ahead, Michelle.
As a postscript to Councilwoman Bergner's comments about the teachers and their pensions, and also to Mr. Metrick's comments, the teachers in the state of Rhode Island pay into their pensions at the highest rate in the country.
Thank you. Any other final thoughts? All right, this is going to bring us to the end. Thank you for everyone's time. Thank you for showing up. Thank you, school committee members, school administration, town administration. It's going to close this one out. We do have the municipal side of CIP to look through tomorrow, so encourage you to come back. But thank you and have a good night.